July 19th, 1952, Washington National Airport. In the tower's glass-enclosed top floor, controller Joe Zacco saw a strange blip sticking across his radar screen. It wasn't a bird, it wasn't a plane. What was it? He looked out of the window and spotted a bright light hovering in the sky. He turned to his partner, Howard Cochran, who was sitting 3 feet away. "Look at that bright light," Zacco said. "If you believe in flying saucers, that could sure be one." And then the light took off, zooming away at an incredible speed. What did happen on that fateful July night has been haunting the imagination of US and world's population for 7 long decades now. What was up there in the sky where nothing should have been? Was it nothing more than a simple bug of the radar? Or perhaps it was just a flock of innocent ducks minding their own business? Or maybe, just maybe, it wasn't a bug or a mistake. What if on that cold summer night there was something in the sky, something that didn't belong to this planet, something which came from the cold void of enigmatic space, something alien? Destroy All Humans is a 2000 game which got a fancy, shiny remake back in 2020. The events of this game take place in an alternative 1950s, where it turns out that we are not so alone in the vacuum of cosmos. We follow Crypto, a biologically engineered alien specimen, during his invasion of purely fictional country of USA. Together with this cynical, sadistic and just cruel little bastard, we get to go on a completely unhinged rampage all over the country of the free, probe every and anyone, and of course discover the mysteries of Little Green Man. There were times when these 3 magical worlds weren't really associated with extraterrestrial forces of human enslavement. However, it was still used to describe something mostly mystical, like goblins for example, or kinda racist way of describing Japanese combatants during World War II. Yikes. But all that changed after August 21, 1955. Sutton's family lived in Kelly, Kentucky, which for all intents and purposes is just a random place in the middle of fuck all. Around 7 p.m, Billy Ray Taylor, who has the most Southern American name I can imagine, was fetching water when he saw a flying object which was red bright with an exhaust all colors of the rainbow. The object hovered over the house and dropped on the ground shortly after. When Billy recited his encounter to the rest of the family, they naturally laughed at him and his foolish behavior. However, no one laughed when about 1 hour later they saw a humanoid creature approaching their home. It was 3.5 feet tall, which when converted into non-crown units is more or less 106 centimeters. It had an oversized head that was almost perfectly round, and arms that extended almost to the ground. The huge hands had talons at the end of the fingers. The eyes were much bigger than human eyes and glowed with yellowish light. They were directed neither to the front nor to the side, but about midway between. It also had its hands raised as if someone had told him he was about to be robbed. So naturally, the Sutton family did what any real hard-boiled American would do. They started shooting at what could have been the first intergalactic visitor of Earth. But to the surprise of everyone, guns didn't actually solve anything. After an unexpected visitor did what is described as a flip, he disappeared in the darkness. But not for long. Shortly after the intruder appeared again, this time behind the side window of the house. After being Americanized once more and doing another sick, wicked, red flip, he retreated. When Taylor, one of the family members, stepped outside to scoop the situation, he was almost grabbed by the claw-like hand from the above. Luckily, Taylor was swiftly pulled back inside, and the insidious creature got to taste more of that sweet American freedom. After that, the whole situation devolved into total chaos. Suttons started to straight up blasting the alien scum all over their yard. but it was to no effect. Green Ritter men appeared to be not only bulletproof but also surprisingly fast and agile. More than that, no matter how many times they were shown the right side of the gun, they still kept coming back. Eventually it got so bad that the Sutons decided to take their luck, jump into 2 cars and rush to the Hopkinsville police station. When they returned together with the police, the yard was completely abandoned. No signs of the unexpected visitors or anything that could confirm their presence remained. Anything except a few used shotgun shells and the weird luminous light at the place where one of the alleged invaders was shot before. After thoroughly searching through the estate and finding nothing that could confirm the Sutton's story, police reassured the family that everything will be okay and left the property around 2:15 a.m. But everything wasn't okay. Somewhere around 2:30, the creatures returned. Not much is known about the second string of encounters, but the fact that there was more shooting involved. Luckily, the daybreak brought the so-needed relief and the little green men were seen for the last time on August 22, 5:15 a.m. And as far as we know, that was the first and the last time when Sutons faced the alleged invaders from beyond. Later the famous sketch of Green Man was drawn, and the media picked the story to then run completely wild with it. It even brought the attention of the government, which sent the special Project Blue Book agency that was responsible for investigating the supposed cases of alien contacts. Over the years, there were a lot of critics as well as believers of the Great Sutton Invasion. We don't know if it was really a close encounter of the third kind, or it was just liquor which had been responsible for the whole story. However, during the initial search of the premises, little to no booze was found, so it makes the explanation of "Yeehaw, rednecks getting drunk and shooting at the shadows, brother?" to be unlikely. One thing that everyone can agree on is that when Sutons came to the Hopkinsville police station, they were absolutely terrified. On the way back, one of the police investigators observed that Billy Ray Taylor was pale, almost hysterical, and had a pulse beat somewhere around 140 beats per minute. Even the skeptics agree that maybe the boy could pretend to be frightened in some ways, but I don't know how he could make his heart beat twice as fast as usual. In addition to that, shortly before the incident, one of the state police officers reported how several unusual meteors passed above him with whining, like artillery noise, sounds. They were traveling with a descending trajectory in the general direction of the Sutton farm. Just after the incident, the same policeman stated that those couldn't have been the ordinary meteors, for they were too big and made too much sound. But later, he willingly corrected his statement and said that they were definitely just meteors. Or maybe they were not. Destroy All Humans has a great arsenal with which you can wreak absolute chaos. From a flying saucer to explosive cows to even the fan favorite, excessive and lethal anal probing. However, the most powerful and certainly the most unnerving tool under Crypto's hood is his holographic horror bob. It's one thing to fry people or drown them with telekinesis or make their heads explode with radio waves, but to infiltrate them, make them believe that you are nothing more than a hardworking member of their community, to then backstab them when they expected the least, is so much more spooky than your simple total human annihilation. John Carpenter's The Thing is a classic piece of cinematography, a well-aged, elegant example of good old premium kino. So naturally I've seen it for the first time only like a month ago. Wait till I watch The Shining and write an essay about that in 2055. If you lived under the Iron Curtain for the last 40 years, let me just summarize what this extremely famous and massively influential monument of cinematography is about. It's about shooting dogs from helicopters with a high caliber rifle, preferably. But it's also about scary, mad impressive even 40 years later, monsters doing monsterly monster stuff. The great villain of The Thing is this amorphous, shapeless, thing that can turn into grotesque abominations and straight up eat our faces. However, that's not the most scary part of the thing, because it can not only mutilate you in so many unspeakable ways, what is truly horrifying is that it can penetrate your own body and then slowly, bit by bit, corrupt every single part of you before completely taking control to do monsterly monster stuff later. And all that violent monster stuff is impressive when you watch the film, but it's this idea of something so insidious that looks, behaves and seems to be human in every possible way is what you can't stop thinking about long after the film has ended. The true horror of Carpenter's film is that tension that you feel when you try to figure out who has already been indoctrinated and replaced by this alien being. Because aliens may be this mystical green man with the sick flips, but what if instead of being savage intergalactic barbarians with hunger for human flesh, they rather choose to subtly exist in shadows, while bit by bit taking away control of our own future away from us? Can we really shoot something which is human in everything, but it's a devious hatred of the human race? Because even if we know that it's somewhere here among us, we still can't do shit to actually stop it. All we can do is dissolve in paranoia and distrust to other fellow men. Because what if it's them who have already been replaced? Can we trust them? Can we trust anyone? Aliens are not scary solely because they are from space and have other color of skin. No, the horror of aliens comes from their ability to be everywhere and nowhere at the same time. To prey our entire civilization like a fiddle and destroy us without even letting us realize that we already lost. In The Thing, the alien is not a concrete being which you can burn and be done with the problem. It's this entity which can be anything and anywhere. Like it's not a beast, but rather a virus which spreads without you even seeing how and when. And then it completely destroys the American way of life. So in a way it's almost like communism. End of World War II was a pretty confusing time. The world has changed forever, but more than that, the two of the world's most powerful nations immediately got into another dick measuring contest, which could potentially end the entire human race. It's almost like we never learn from our own mistakes. Those were quite turbulent times, so that's what I'm trying to say. And the fact that the reports of flying unidentified, maybe lit or maybe not, green men were popping all over the entire country didn't make it any easier. The Sutons weren't the only victims of cosmic bastards. All across the states, people were seeing flying saucers and other incomprehensible shenanigans. It has gone to the point when the US government had to establish an agency to investigate all of the unexplained contacts with presumably creatures from beyond. Unfortunately, Project Blue Book and all the different committees which looked into its findings weren't able to find any confirmation of the extraterrestrial danger. The majority of what at a first glance was a threat from space usually had very mundane and boring explanations. I mean, there was also a controversy that Project did not, or weren't allowed to, study some of the more sensitive UFO cases. This could mean several things really. It could be that the US government, in its sheer gigapower of incompetency, established an investigative unit and then forgot to actually give them cases to investigate, which is, knowing all that we know about American government, is quite possible, but maybe they were trying to hide something from all of us. What if they did make contact with alien forces? What if the same alien forces already infiltrated the higher-ups and the Senate and even the military? What if Harry S. Truman was a filthy reptiloid with a hunger for human infants? Or perhaps the role of Project Blue Book was never to actually study the threat of alien invasion. The real threat of the UFO craze was the panic which it caused across the country. According to Robertson Report, the real danger from the alien craze was subjectivity of public to mass hysteria and greater vulnerability to possible enemy psychological warfare. and the word enemy in this statement was not used as a reference to the little green man of Alpha Centauri. No, the real enemy of that time wasn't little and green, it was red. Red as a blood of revolution. After the World War II, the US was terrified of the USSR. After letting the nuclear genie out of the bottle, it was only a matter of time before the Soviets caught up and were able to erase whole cities from existence in an instance. So when they finally did and successfully detonated their first bomb in 1948, It's 1949, what the fuck you are talking about? The race was fucking on. The image of US as the world's only superpower was finally challenged. Not only Soviets possessed impressive military capabilities, their influence over Eastern Europe and the desire to expand further into Asia made them one of the main players on the world's stage. And to battle all that, it wasn't enough to just stack up on guns and wave your big armed cock in front of Soviet faces. Every single American citizen had to not only know who was the real enemy, but they also had to believe that fighting those dirty fatherless communist scums was the right thing to do. And to do that, US needed a boogeyman. Luckily, communism was a perfect boogeyman. It allowed to divide the world into us versus them. The glorious capitalism freedom fighters and the tyrannical bastards of communism. The Truman Doctrine, which was passed in 1948, ensured that the US would do everything in their power to stop this devious spread of this vile and totalitarian ideology. The people of a number of countries of the world have recently had totalitarian regimes forced upon them against their will. At the present moment, in the world history, nearly every nation must choose between alternative ways of life. The choice is too often not a free one. And the USSR was in no way a good place for its citizens and their personal freedoms. But by over-exaggerating and sensationalizing every single misstep of the Soviet Union, while opposing it with the saint-like status of the US and everything it does, the clear distinction between what is good and what is evil could be made. And then, when you spice it up with tales of nuclear holocaust and the ever-present spice of Soviet regime, you have your population in a complete massive hysteria over the all-present but invisible threats of this mystical communist monster. The most famous thematic interpretation of The Thing is that it was meant to represent the omnipresent tension of Cold War era. There is something awfully familiar about characters accusing other characters of being the thing on the basis of little to no evidence. Additionally, the underlying fears of assimilation, imitation and infection of civilized areas powerfully invoke the paranoia that fed anti-communist fervor in the United States. The hysteria never really left us, and Carpenter knew that even then.
Basically, the lack of trust that's in the world now. We see it all over. Countries, people. We don't trust each other anymore. We don't know who to trust. We're with somebody that we think maybe they're our loved ones and they may attack us. And that's what The Thing is. It has a lot of truth in it, kind of dressed up as a monster movie.
The alien craze of the 50s didn't coincidentally happen at the same time as Red Scare was in full swing. It was an unfortunate byproduct of that same scare. When you pump your population with hysteria over every single aspect of life, starting from school nuclear drills up to starving the indigenous people because their traditional ways of life was considered to be communistic and therefore un-American. Then it should come as no surprise when those same people who have been made paranoid of every single shadow start suspecting that even the stars are here to get them. It's not hard to start seeing little green people when you're already conditioned to see minuscule red comrades in every book and Hollywood film. The US government could pretend that it tried to get to the root of UFO obsession, but make no mistake, the root of alien scare was never in space and distant planets. It was always in the same offices who told confused, scared people about the big bad red boogeyman. Destroy all humans is not a topic of this video, as you probably already guessed. But what I find funny about this game is that the more you play, the more the aliens, who are literally here to probe and vaporize humanity, begin to look like a lesser evil. At least they're honest about their tyrannical and promiscuous desires. They don't scheme to mind control their own population through radio, or poison food of their own people to make them more compliant to anything they then tell them, or just straight up lie about what is really going on. DAH is a satire of the Cold War craze, but what it certainly gets 100% correct is that it weren't aliens that people of 50s should have been afraid of. Because it weren't aliens who artificially created mass hysteria to promote ideological propaganda, it weren't little green men who demonized people across half of the world just to reassure their ego, it weren't cosmic abominations who used money and trust of their own taxpayers to build a fiction which could justify any act that they would do, no matter how hideous or evil it may be. It weren't interdimensional beings who terrorized their own people in search of the threat that never was there in the first place. It weren't cosmic creatures who tormented and abused the citizens of U.S.A. just for shits and giggles. So then I ask you, who really did all of the above? US government. It wasn't a rhetorical question. It was the US government of this time. They even confessed that the majority of U.F.O seeings that made countless people lose their sleep and left them scarred forever was just them testing some new cool jets. Those people were supposed to serve the same citizens who selected them, but instead they decided to play God and made the entire generation live in constant fear and paranoia, and additionally almost destroyed the entire world. But hey, at least after the Cold War has finally ended, they learned their lesson, and never again did anything just as manipulative, disingenuous, and straight up fucked up. Right?
There's before 9/11 and there's after 9/11.
We were completely 100% lost when it came to the politics of the fight, who we were actually fighting. What we were doing was we were creating a national army for a nation that simply didn't exist. We built this thing that simply cannot exist without us pouring billions of dollars. We built a complete fantasy of a military for Afghanistan.
No one even really mentions 9/11 anymore. And that, to me, that's the whole reason that I'm over here.